Hello and welcome to the Art Tributes interview series. Thank you so much for coming, every one of you. We're so excited that you're here. And thank you for finding this video wherever you found it. So these interviews exist for three reasons. One, to connect students of Ancient Art Studios with the teachers and influences who helped shape the teachers of Ancient Art Studios, Carmina, Sabine, Najla, and myself, and to shape the things that we teach, the traditions that we understand, the movements that we know. So we want to connect the students to where this came from. Also, point number two, we want to share with the community at large, or even just lovers of art history in our region, who might find the video and might realize that New England played a fascinating, pioneering historic role in belly dance in the United States. Thirdly, for me, personally, I want to learn more about my own teachers and mentors. Even during the time when we were studying, it was very busy. And so I just want a chance to sit and get to know the people that blessed my life and helped me to learn about this art form. So hopefully you are going to have a great time today. I know I am. So today's guest is Miriam Hatoum, whose dance name is Amira Jamal. Amira Jamal became my teacher in Boston after I had already begun dancing. I chose her due to my curiosity about performing. My first group and solo performances happened at Boston University on a very big, scary, awesome stage under her enthusiastic insistence that despite my terror, I could do it. Amira Jamal's classes were filled with extraordinary dancers. Chantal, Jamila, Nadira Jamal, Alikia, Sharonda, Saroya Jamal, so many fine dancers. And with a master's in education, Amira was truly a pioneer. It was obvious by the way we all learned and flourished. So with her, I learned many movements, which I love today, and I learned traditions that she shared, such as the 5-part routine, including dancing while playing with finger cymbals, dancing to the 9/8 rhythm, and so much more. Amira Jamal's experience from her years of performing professionally in New York City gave us all insights and a style base rooted in culture, tradition, and pride. I remember how sad I was as I drove away from the last class I took with Amira Jamal at Boston University because I was moving out of Boston. But thankfully, this was not the end of the relationship. Eventually, with her blessing and others, I founded this studio. When I was unsure about opening it, she came to teach a double veil workshop. That was 20 years ago. At least. Afterward, she sat and chatted with me and encouraged me with advice I've never forgotten. There are 2 ways to build the biggest building in town: tear everyone else's down or make yours the tallest. That philosophy and her belief in me and her students says everything about who this woman is. Of course, we'll learn all about her today as we chat, and after our interview, Miriam will dance a little bit for us.
And do a little lesson.
And maybe even a little lesson, we could learn something.
Okay.
We will surely take great inspiration from her stories today and her dancing, especially considering that she's not danced for folks in 15 years. Thank you so much for making this your first steps out. In that time, she's had 2 knees and a hip replaced, plus had shoulder surgery, and gave me permission to say this. That's just very inspiring as she's stepping back into the arena at 74 years old. So without further ado, I'm just so delighted. Join me in welcoming a former teacher and a hero in our region, Amira Jamal.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have some photos, and I want to just start with asking you a little bit about your childhood. Where were you born? Was there something that happened that prepped you for belly dance?
I was born in Boston at the Booth Memorial, and my little brother, always tells everybody I came from the Morgan Memorial. If you, the younger of you might not understand the reference, but it was like Salvation Army.
Okay.
So yeah, my sister came. My mother brought her home from the Morgan Memorial, and that's where I started.
And then something happened in your childhood that gave you a little curiosity about music.
Well, I played viola. I played violin, and then I started with viola, and she has a picture there. But I was thrown into viola because anybody who knows a viola is bigger than a violin. And I think at the school orchestra, everybody held out their hands, and the ones with the biggest hands got shifted to viola. So
That's what happened?
So that's what happened. That's me, viola. And I played all through high school, and I played through college. And I toured, I didn't tour. I was part of a tour, Israel 1 year, Switzerland 1 year. And then when I was in college, I was professionally playing in the Pioneer Valley Symphony Orchestra. Not professionally that I would ever be a professional, but it was always part of the music.
Did you feel like you had an inclination to be a dancer? Did you notice in the music that you wanted to get up?
Well, when I was, first of all, I never had dance lessons. I have friends, they're little twins, not little twin sisters, they're my age now, but they had ballet lessons. And my parents thought that dance lessons were very frivolous. So I never had dance lessons, so that was out of the picture. But when I was playing viola, I would sit, especially something so passionate like a Beethoven symphony or just something that was passionate. And I'd be playing and I'd want to get up from my seat. So I knew that being a seated musician was not for me. I couldn't do that. I couldn't contain myself that way. And also, I don't think I told you, I was a singer at the New England Conservatory.
Oh, really?
I sang there, and that also, I would sing, and it would it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough to process, because the music, I felt, I wasn't playing music. The music was being processed through me. And you can't do that when you're just sitting like this. So I knew that being a professional singer or viola player or whatever, I knew that that was not going to be a future for me. I didn't know what would be, but I knew that that wasn't going to be a future for me. Okay. It was very stifling.
So then you end up discovering belly dance eventually. You ended up in Connecticut?
Yep, I was working on my master's degree in Connecticut, and I went out to visit my brother in Chicago, and they said to me, have you ever heard of this thing called belly dancing? And I never had. And, nice Jewish girl from Boston, what do I know from belly dancing? And so my sister-in-law said to me, she says, well, when you get back to school, she says and keep in mind, this is like the 70s still. So they said, there's this thing called adult ed. Now it's nothing. She said, look at adult ed and see if you can find this thing called belly dancing. And that's how I started. I took my first adult ed class, and I just said, oh my God, it was what I had been looking for, because it was a way to process the music and not be in a chair.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And your teacher there, she was Armenian with a Turkish name. What was her name?
Her name was Amira.
That's a
I just remember that.
beautiful start.
Right. And we did that, and I just practiced for hours. I just loved it.
And was that the time were you aware of, magazines like the Arabesque and
not
things?
yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
I hadn't moved into any sort of awareness about what belly dancing was.
Okay.
Or who the dancers. I only knew from adult ed, the teacher I had. And her culture allowed her to teach other women, but she couldn't go out and dance. So I never saw anybody dancing.
So what happened that you finally did?
She took me to a show and at a restaurant in Connecticut, and I said, oh my God, you make money doing this? That's all I had to know. That's all I had to know.
So then you start practicing hard
I
or
start-
getting into
I
the
started practicing. This is when I found a teacher. I don't know if you want me to talk about some of my teachers now. And this teacher, I do remember her name. Her name was Electra.
Can we
And
back up 1 second?
oh, certainly.
I just want to point out, is this the kind of thing you were practicing to?
Yeah, I had the record and the art of belly, and I only had one. Eventually, I got art of belly dancing, or the other way around, and that's all I knew, and that's what I knew belly dancing costumes looked like, and that was the music I knew. Is that the one that has the full routine on it? That's about 12 minutes, because that'll go into another story.
Yes.
Okay,
it
so
does.
that was the one.
So this is George Abdu, and you had the record.
The record,
I think that's interesting because today students have the universe of music.
right?
And you think that was a benefit that you had the one record? Did it help you to?
Well, I had to practice. When I practiced, over and over, and those of my students, I have a tissue here. When my students walked in, I started crying. I would tell my students when we did it at BU, we had the drills with zills. And all we did, year after year after year, maybe 10 years, more than 10 years, the same music with the same drills, with the same zills. And every August, I sat and I said, oh, they must be getting so tired of this. I just don't know what to do. And my son, who was playing football in high school at the time, and I told him my conundrum, and he said, Mom, he said, this is what you do in football. This is how the football players make their millions of dollars. If you're a quarterback, you do quarterback drills, period. You don't worry what another person on the team does. He says, you just keep doing what you're doing. And this is where that came from, was having the one record with the 12 songs and just practicing over and over and over and over again. I didn't know anything. I didn't know where to go. I couldn't see dancers.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that was that.
Something happened. You end up taking incompletes in college and moving to New York.
Oh,
What
yes.
happened?
So I had this teacher on Hempstead that I had gone up to Hempstead. Her name was Electra. And after work, so I was already in New York at the time. So let me back up. So I decided I was going to be a belly dancer, period. I was much to the chagrin of my parents, needless to say. And while I learned about this, now the Arabesque magazine, this was one of the Arab magazines. I think Bobby put that out. I think that was a
Right,
Bobby.
these were all Bobby's.
That was all Bobby Farah.
He was a fella in New York.
Right.
And you knew about these magazines.
Yes, I had never seen him dance. I had never seen anybody dance except, if my teacher took me to a restaurant. That's what I knew from belly dancing. And I, looked at the pictures and this. And so Bobby Farah was the editor of that and the owner of that. And I remember talking to him for hours. He was very hospitable about that. I said I was working on my master's degree. And I would call Bobby and talk with him for hours. I want to be a dancer and nobody is supporting me and I don't have any money and I don't know what blah, 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 all this. And he would just listen and listen and listen. And he's the one who supported me to go to New York.
Can I show a little
Sure.
picture of him so those who don't know, he was more than a magazine. Okay, so this is a picture of Bobby for those who don't know. Had you seen him perform?
No, I knew nothing.
Okay. But you just knew him from
I
the
knew
magazine.
him from the magazine. He brought belly dancing out of a lot of his dancers were in the clubs. I mean, that's how they made their money. But he brought dancing out of the clubs, and he would rent town halls, and he would rent museums, and he would do shows, and he brought all of the dancers that you know now beyond just the stage belly dancing from different countries, and he gave that like legitimacy. But that's not what I went to him for. I went to him because I knew his name from a magazine. That's all I knew.
Okay.
But he really legitimized dancing.
So then you're talking with him on the phone.
And he says, okay, why don't you come to New York and be a dancer? I said, all right. I had maybe 10 classes. No, it was the end of the semester. So I had 5 classes to go. So what I did is I stayed, I took incompletes and everything. Didn't finish it, I just left.
And your parents were on board
Oh,
with that.
they were, it was horrible. I'm not going to support you. I said, all right, I'll find a way. So I had cousins who lived in Wyckoff, New Jersey, and they said, okay, you can bring your van of, I mean, I had a van, you know, I had a college apartment. I didn't have that much, maybe more than what a car would hold. And I brought everything, and they kept everything in their garage. And I slept at their house, and I took the bus every day from Wyckoff to New York and went into agencies. I could type. In those days, you had to take typing classes at typing school. All right, so I knew how to type. This I knew how to do. So I went every day, I took the bus from, and I worked for a temp agency, and every day they sent me on different jobs, until finally I found a job in New York, and that's what I did. I went from New Jersey to New York on a bus every day until I found a job.
Wow.
Okay, and then I found a place to live on 3rd and 23rd. What a dump, but it was mine. It was mine.
And your goal, you thought you were going to be, I'll just try to get a photo of Bobby because he taught classes.
He taught classes.
Let me see if, there he is.
Yep.
That's interesting because he's teaching with a cigarette in his hand. Right?
Well, it was the 70s. I mean, the doctors smoked cigarettes in their office. It was nothing at that time. But, and so that's it. So I moved, and I took my incompletes, and I left, and I moved with my trunk load of stuff to my cousin's house, and that's where I started it in New York.
Okay.
And I took, lessons from Bobby and other dancers, other teachers there.
Okay, we'll talk about them in a minute, but can you talk about didn't you do a show in Connecticut before you left Connecticut? You got a chance, you tried something,
Okay,
what
that's
was that?
where this album comes in.
Okay,
Okay. So,
back here, hold on.
all right. So I meant to bring it, I didn't.
Is it Rocks Mustafa, the dance routine?
Maybe that was it.
The albums had little routines on them
Right.
at the time.
Right. So that's what I knew a belly dancing routine was, 12 minutes, all right? You're going to see a 12-minute one tonight. But anyway, I went to a show. I don't think I told my teacher, because she probably would have said, Miriam, don't do this. So I found a restaurant that had belly dancing, and I walk in, and I'm just, I'm hot stuff. And I said, I'd like to dance here. Do you have any? Well, we could use you Saturday night. We do 2 shows. So, and it was live music. So I went with this handmade costume. It was before I had a real costume. I went with my handmade costume, like sequins and a couple of coins on it maybe. Oh, and my bra. My bra was a regular bra. It was a little bit shimmery, so I thought it was hot stuff. And I had pearls. I had strung pearls together that was about this long, and I hung them. Look, I had worms hanging from them. Okay, so it was just a regular bra with some worms hanging from it, and a belt that had elasticized sequins around the top. Oh God, I wish I brought it. And some coin stuff. And I think the skirt was just a piece of fabric. I mean, who knows? And I went and I did, and so live music. So anybody who knows the live music knows that for an introduction, they'll slow up a little bit. They'll do a little time. There'll be a little drop. But I thought that was the whole show. So I finished everything, including floor work, in the introduction. All right?
Veil routine, everything.
Everything. The veil was off. I had done the floor work. I had done my drum solo in 8 minutes. I don't know.
And then were you surprised
And then
more
the
music kept coming?
the music kept playing. And I went, oh my God. And I didn't, by then I was out of steps. And I didn't know what to do. And so the bands caught on, and the bands cut it off. And I went and I said to him, I says, oh, what time is the next show? And and I didn't realize this maybe until 20 years later. And the owner said to me, he says, well, we really don't have enough customers. I'll pay you for both shows, but you can go home. And honest, if I told you that when he said that to me, I thought I was such, can you believe they paid me for 2 shows and I only had to do 1? That's how good I was. Then we moved to New York.
Okay. Thank you for telling the first show experience.
There was no such thing as recitals. I mean, if and I didn't know Bobby at the time, so I didn't know recitals. I just knew my record album, and I knew I could do whatever the teacher told me, and I knew I had a bra with worms on it. I was really set to go.
Okay. So then you're in New York,
Okay.
and we have a little glimpse of this story. What's going on?
So this is a story. All right. And the other picture that was in the flyer were the 2 pictures taken there. So I lived in this dump on 3rd Avenue, and eventually I moved up, and I lived on 42nd Street across from the UN. It was called Tudor City. It was a sublet. I could never have afforded rent there. But anyway, so this time of year, so it was this time of year, so it was 50 years ago this month or something. The UN is so gorgeous this time of year. It's all daffodils. I mean, anyone nodding your head, it's gorgeous, all right? And they didn't have security those days, at least I didn't think they had security. And I went in and I had a friend with a camera, no such thing as photographers and iPhones and things like that. And he took pictures and I was like, this and this. And there was nobody's bothering me and I'm not bothering anybody. And I have this sword. And I take out the sword, 50 officers they must have been in the trees. And I don't think anyone has been escorted out of the UN that quickly. And I was told never to come back. And that's the picture of the UN with my sword.
And this costume,
And by then, so my teacher at the adult ed, so she had a cousin who she didn't make costumes because they didn't do that sort of thing, but she was a seamstress, so she knew what to do. So she made me that. But this was after my show in Connecticut with the worms, okay? So this was a real costume, and I just wanted it really elegant, so it was just pearls and a few coins. And you'll see I have a purple skirt over there that was one of my first costumes. We would attach the belts to the skirts and you would just, you'd just pull it up and you'd have a costume.
So that was the first
That was my first costume.
Now, can I ask you, is that this?
That's this, okay? So eventually I took off the pearls, but the base was good. The bra fit and the belt fit. And I cut the skirt off. So you can see something I cut. So what I did is I removed the pearls and I made it into this.
And you strung these beads yourself?
This was all hand done. There was no such thing as machine-made fringe. It was all hand done. You'd sit for hours and hours and hours and do nothing but do fringe. And all the dancers in New York, you'd all make your own costumes. And this, by the way, was my first veil. I was going to use it today when I was dancing, but was a little bit short. But I brought it because it's all part of the story. So the thing is in New York at the time, there was no such thing as taking 8 lessons and then going to Miss Belly Dance and buying a costume. In the time that it took you to make this, you would already have had a year of lessons. Okay, there was no rushing on stage. I had this with me, so I was still a beginner and I was still technically rushing on stage. But once I started to want to wear this kind of quality costume, it would take years to make it. So this is all hand fringed.
Beautiful. And the bugle beads feel really smooth.
Oh yeah, you would buy your beads by the kilo. And these particular beads, they're called 3-cut. You could buy 1-cut, 2-cut, 3-cut. 4-cut is really long, and 5-cut. Shadia here knows all about the beads. So this was 3-cut. I don't know whether it meant an inch was cut into 3, or I don't know why it was called 3-cut. But this was 3-cut, and most of beading was done with 3-cut beads. And you would just sit there and you would just bead. You would just sit there and bead. And you can see each one is hand knotted. Okay, so you would do a fringe and knot it, and do another fringe and knot it, and do another fringe and knot it.
Was that a particular thread, a dental floss? What did you
Well,
use?
this happened to be thick thread. It couldn't be very light thread because the bugle beads are glass, and so they would rub and they would break. So you had to use something thick enough. I don't know if we had dental floss in 1970. Okay, but it was thick thread. But you had to do it because you had to find a needle that could go through the bead. So it had to be heavy, but not too heavy. So there was a lot, it was a lot to put in a line of fringe like that.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that, because a lot of us aren't in that culture where you made everything.
And it, by the way, you'll find it on the table.
You think so?
I told Jarrell, I said, I'm done, it's all going.
That one might not make it to the table, I'm just saying. So okay, here you are again.
So that was the other picture. So the guards were fine when I'm standing there like that, but as soon as I did, because they were getting a show, what did they care? But as soon as that sword came out, man, they came out of the woodwork. And these were just, oh, see, that's the first costume. This was probably my shot at a photographer, okay? And this is, probably this is what I could afford. And it was, you know, the lighting, this is what I have. What can I tell you?
No.
She said, pull out some old pictures.
It's beautiful to see.
All right, so that's this veil here that I have here that's going with the costume. So that was that.
So Greek Town, some people call it, there's all these names for 8th Avenue.
We just called it the 8th Avenue
The 8th
Circuit.
Avenue Circuit, okay.
So I started to say there were dancers with about 12 regulars. And what they did is they were all these clubs were within walking distance. And you would do a show at Port Said and then throw on a cover up. I don't even know you'd change a costume. And you'd go to another club. And so you would dance at 3 or 4 clubs in an evening. And you would and that's what you did. So you'd see all the dancers. So especially if you as a customer jumped around, you know, you would see one dancer more than once. And we all had to sit on the stage and play our zills. There was no, just wait in the back until your show is ready. You'd have to sit on so everybody played their zills. Everybody were just perfect zill players. And you would sit and you'd play for the other dancers. But you'd have enough dancers in the circuit that if one of them had to get up and go to another club, you still would have. That's why I said there was about 12 dancers or 15 dancers and maybe 6 or 7 clubs, and each one would have 3 or 4. So it would be rotating, but you would always have 3 or 4 dancers on the stage and 3 or 4 dancers running to the other clubs and another dancer running in to do her show at that club. And Amy Smith told me, I must tell this story, on that costume that I had with the pearls. So the very first time I danced at Port Said and I had that costume, they had black lights. And I had never experienced black lights in my life. And I looked down and my whole costume was glowing. And I was, because of the pearls. And I was so like, I didn't know what was going on. I mean, eventually, you know, I shook it off and I kept on dancing, but that was just something I did not expect, because they used black lights for everybody, but the other dancers didn't use pearls. So you can imagine what this one looked like. Okay, but I didn't convert this until afterwards, so I understood what black light was. But that original one with all the draped pearls, I was quite, you know, flummoxed is the word.
So you have a lot of influences. You were friends with dancers, you had little taps with different teachers. But would you say watching the dance all those nights in a row, watching the dancers was one of the main ways you learned? And can you
Oh,
describe like what you learned? How did that work?
absolutely, absolutely. You'd see somebody do something that you had never seen before. And if it was a nice, not everybody was nice, but if it was a nice person and you say, well, how did you do that? But it wasn't even a matter of they were nice or they weren't nice. They were rushing to the next club. Okay, but you'd see them in other situations, like Atlantic Avenue, where we had our restaurant. They would all come and they would all eat at it. So you'd see them sitting or something, and you'd say, "Oh, that move that you did that sort of looked like this. How did you do it?" And so, they were nice. But it wasn't so much that you asked them questions how to do it and they showed you. It's just that you saw it. You saw the same routine over and over and over again, like my students who were here tonight or today. If I remember, I don't know what I'm going to remember, but if I remember, you can say, oh yeah, that's the open door, or that's the Egyptian nails, or that's the, you see the same ones over and over and over again. So it's not that a dancer would teach you a move, but you would see it and see it and see it. And then if you needed it tweaked, you'd say, oh, I'm trying to learn how to do this thing that you do. And she'd say, yeah, your shoulder has to be back a little bit. So you'd pick it up by watching it, but then you'd get the tweaks from the other dancers if you needed help with that regard. And it was all five-part routines. It was because it was Greek Club, Greek Boulevard, apparently. So there was no rock shocky the way you know it now, no bellady, no any tribal thing. It was nothing like that. It was 5 parts routine. Introduction, veil, something in the middle, a floor work. Everybody did floor work. There was no such thing. I do standing now. I couldn't get on the floor if my life depended on it. So you can do the standing stuff now, but in those days when everybody was young, everything was on the floor. You did your floor work, you did your drum solo, you did your finale, and that was it. And a few people would do kashlumar at the end, which is a Turkish thing with the skirt and all of that sort of stuff. But it was the same 5-part routine. You got to know all the same music. It wasn't anything like, oh, I never heard that before. No, you did. You did.
Do you remember an aha moment where you said, oh, what I did in Connecticut wasn't right? Or did it just all flow?
I think it just I think I was too ignorant to be embarrassed. All right? It was just, all right, well, I'm here now. I'll do this.
Was it hard to get your foot in the door?
Not necessarily then, because they needed dancers. They had to churn out dancers like crazy.
Wow.
So I never carried it through to be the star on the 8th Avenue circuit the way other dancers had been, because I had life, when we had the restaurant, I had life intervene. But I'm just trying to think. I forget what the question was.
Oh, that's okay. We were talking about, how you learned and how the 8th Avenue was a teacher in itself.
It was.
Okay. And then the musicians. Did you have favorite bands at favorite places?
I didn't.
Okay.
I think here in Boston, the musicians are a little bit less common. There's not when I say common, I don't mean common like, oh, she's just common. I mean, you have your musicians that make it to all the parties, and they make it to all the Hoffleys, and they up at the Athenian Corner, and then you see them somewhere else, like at Biblos, because there's a smaller group. In New York, there were so many musicians. There were a few. His name had just came off, but there's a Canoon player that was a special Canoon player. I don't know if he's in one of the wedding pictures.
Yeah, maybe down.
But basically no, because there were so many musicians. Because the musicians didn't have to rotate. So if there were 8 clubs, there were 8 bands.
Right.
Okay, and then if there were 8 bands on a Saturday night, there might be 5 weddings going on. There was another 5 bands. So that's what I meant by common, not there were so many musicians that, and then you didn't get to be like the only dancer at one club, so they were your favorite musicians. You went to all the clubs. If you had time to learn anybody's name, it was just very, very, very different.
Did you ask for any music, or was it just they were going to play you a 5-part and off you go?
They'll just play you what they're going to play you. I didn't start asking for music maybe until here in Boston, maybe up at the Athenaeum corner, I might have said, I want Aziza, I want Beer Demet, but still you had to brace yourself for not getting it. It certainly wasn't going to sound like it sounded on a record. So even if you asked for a certain song, a lot of times you would just get the essence of a song. And that was also, you couldn't memorize a dance. You could not do choreography in those days.
So 8th Avenue itself was an influence.
Right.
And then you had all of these people in your life. You described it as you said it's a real dance community. Some of them were teachers, some of them were colleagues. You saw each other all the time. Can I just list a few of these and have you tell us something you got? You've already mentioned Electra, but Electra. Right. So she was
She was the one up in Hempstead that I had to take after work. I had to take, and this is why even if I was in the clubs till 4 in the morning and got up to work, not that I went home and took a nap. At 5 o'clock, when everybody had rush hour going home, I would be on that train going up to Westchester, about an hour and a half.
Oh my goodness.
To take a 1-hour lesson and then turn around and come back down.
And can you remember something that you took away from that
Posture.
time? Posture. So
Posture, absolutely.
How was that described in that time?
Because she was very regal. And this is what I remember about her. And she walked like, she had, if you see dances with the candelabras or something, she walked like she had that on her head. And she was really quite something.
Wow.
And she was another one with the drills. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I traveled 3 hours for that lesson, for back and forth for 1-hour lesson.
Wow. Anahid Sofian.
I consider her the biggest influence of my dancing. Do you have one of Anahid?
Yeah.
Oh, there's Anahid. Okay, so Anahid was off, I think she might be on 15th Street, but she was in that area of Manhattan. She had a huge studio, and her big thing was veil work and shiftatelli. And I would say shiftatelli instead of taksim, because as I said, in those days you didn't really do taksim. You did the shiftatelli, and that's the one that goes da 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 da. And you would get on the floor and you would do that. And she had just a way about her. And she had a studio that would have been like this. Like she lived in part of the studio, and then she had her dance studio. And I remember after classes going and sitting with her and talking with her for a couple of hours, almost after every lesson, just to soak up, to learn things. And how did you do this, and how did you learn that, and where did you go? And I was just like a sponge, and thank God she was patient enough, and she sat with me for hours and talking, and she was just all my floor work, which I'm sorry you can't see now, but all my floor work came from Anahid, and all of my veil work came from Anahid. All of it.
Beautiful. You had an article, actually. I don't know when this was.
There might be a copyright at the very bottom of it.
Okay, interview with Anahid Sofian. And this is you interviewing her.
No, I may have.
Or did you get it from somewhere?
No, I interviewed her.
Yeah, 2002.
Okay.
So I was delighted to read it. I wanted to share this paragraph because it reminded me of things that you passed to us. This is what Anahid said. Technical skill is important, and musicality is extremely important. You must know your music. We used to call it having an oriental head, which meant understanding the phrasing and the feeling of the music. This is something that's hard to impart to a student. It comes from listening to the music constantly, all music, folk, Sufi, Persian, Armenian, Turkish, etc. A dancer should also go to all kinds of events, not just to see dancers. One gets knowledge and inspiration from many sources. That sound like things that she would impart to you?
It does, it does. And that's sort of what we were talking about the choreography. It wasn't necessary to know choreography because if you sat in those clubs, 4 or 5 days a week, 3, 4, 5 hours at a time, you would know the music. It didn't matter what they played for you. You could just, and that's where when I told you I stopped playing the viola, that's where this ties in, because I would just process the music. It didn't matter what the song was. And it didn't matter whether and I did this with my girls, I would just throw on a song and say, dance to it, dance to it. And I'm sorry Chantel isn't here. Chantel was another one of my students. I remember at one of her recitals, and you maybe remember the rehearsal, is that she had choreographed everything. And she did it, and I got to start it again. And she did. I got to start it again. And I said, oh, show it to me. I'll call out the steps to you. And she gave it to me, and you may or may not remember this. I took it and I ripped it in half. I said, now you dance from your heart. Okay?
Beautiful.
And that's what you have to do. You have to be a really great dancer like that, you have to process it. It has nothing, you got to know the steps. It's not helpful if you don't know any steps, because then you're just all over the place not knowing what you're doing. But when it comes to the final product, you process it. You don't choreograph it. And sometimes, there's a place for it. if you're in a dance troupe, or somebody asked for a specific piece of music from another country, there's a place for choreography. But generally, unless it's a specific circumstance, you don't want to do. And sometimes when a dancer's do, you see her counting behind she's smiling and she's looking, and she's going 1, 2, 3, because she's not processing it from here, she's processing it from here. And that's what the club scene was. You learned to process from here. Didn't matter what they played for you.
Just beautiful. So that's a little bit of Anahit Sofian, who's still with us.
Oh, yeah.
Still teaching.
Still teaching. She's a couple of years older than I am.
In New York.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah, she has her students.
Okay. So Serena.
Okay, we have Serena. Serena was a very, very big person in New York. If you have so much music, you wouldn't have picked up something of hers. But her son is Scott Wilson, and you might have a Serena thing, or you might have a Scott Wilson CD or whatever, and it all came from Serena. And I didn't study from her. She had a dance troupe also. And I forget where she was dancing, but all these people who had these dance troupes really went out of their way. Like I said, they found museums or, concert halls or they really went out of their way to take what they wanted to show was okay. They all danced in the clubs, but they wanted to show there was another side to it. So Serena and I were very good friends, but I don't know why I didn't take lessons. Oh, I was studying with Anna. There was so much to do. You couldn't take lessons with everybody. It's not like, now there's like one teacher per quadrant of New England or something. There were so many. You did what you could. But Serena wasn't somebody I studied with, but we were friends with Serena.
Then Karina Amara.
Okay. So some of you might remember Karen my kids call her Karen from Connecticut. That was her last name. Mom, Karen from Connecticut called you. I don't know who any other Karen, but her name was Karen from Connecticut. Okay, she passed away a couple of years ago. And I told Orel, I said, she would have been here. She would have slept over my house yesterday, and she would have gone through. We were just inseparable. We were separable. She was in Connecticut, and I was in Massachusetts. She was absolutely my biggest supporter. And I have to tell you how I met, may I digress to the story?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so with Karen, when I was doing this adult ed class in belly dancing, there was a belly dancing contest. And Karen was studying with somebody else, another one. And so we all came together at this belly dancing contest. And I remember I was doing something, maybe the Egyptian pivot or something with the hip, all right? And Karen came over to me and she said, can I ask you how you do that? And I just, we were at a restaurant or something, and I just stood up and I was showing her, and my teacher pulled me over and she said, don't give away all your good stuff. Don't give away all your good stuff. She'll win now. Don't give away all the good stuff. And of course I didn't listen to my teacher. You can see I'm not that kind of person. And Karen and I have been friends, and she's responsible for this grandchild right here. That's the other grandma. May I tell?
Sure.
I know you've got a clock going, but if I can tell the story, because it's so important, and it explains why she's responsible for this granddaughter over here. I told you I was living on 23rd and 3rd, a real dump, and then I found this place up in Tudor City. And it wasn't the days, banks closed at 3 o'clock on Friday, period. They weren't open, you know the story, they weren't open on Saturdays. There was no ATMs, there was nothing. Whatever you had in your wallet on Friday at 3 o'clock is what you had to get you through the weekend, okay? So I was moving, I had hired movers, I mean, not anybody legitimate, but whoever had a truck. And they moved me, and we got to Tudor City, and the guy said, you have way more stuff than I thought you did. If you want your stereo, it's going to cost you another $100.
Yeah.
I had no money. And Karen, I don't know what she had in her wallet, maybe $50. She says, listen, I'm dancing tonight, probably at Port Said. She says, I'm dancing, oh, it was Port Said. She says, I'm dancing tonight at Port Said, and whatever I make in tips, I'll give you half so you can get through the weekend. And then on Monday, when the bank opens, you can get money, you can pay me back. So the guys took the $50. They would probably give it to me even if we didn't pay them anything. But we gave them the $50. So I said, okay, well, what are we going to do now? Neither of us have any money. And it's dinner time. Oh my God, what are we going to do? So she said, I know this restaurant. It's called Cedars of Lebanon. It's on 38th Street. It's around the corner from this. She says, I know the people there, and if we sit at the family table, you know, when you go into a restaurant, you know how there's always a table? She said, if we sit at the family table, they'll feed us, and they won't give us a bill. They'll just feed us. Okay, so I'm sitting there, and this handsome guy who cannot speak any English comes over to the table. He can say to me, do you want mint tea? But it wasn't a sentence like that, but I knew what he meant. And he came over, mint tea. I hate mint tea. I said, yes, please. And he poured mint tea, and honest to God, this was like a sitcom. There was a plant next to me. Tea went right into the plant. And he'd come over and he'd say, oh, let me pour you some more tea. And this went on all night. And then in his broken English, however we could communicate, it was so handsome. It was like Omar Sharif, those of you who remember who that actor was. Oh, you'll see, I think I have a couple of pictures of him. So so we got to talking, and he said, well, where are you going to be later? And I says, well, I'm going to be at Port Said. He knew Karen, because Karen went to that restaurant a lot. I said, I'm going to be at Port Said watching Karen. He says, oh, well, I'll see you later. So about 1 o'clock in the morning, he walks in, and I said, I met a man in New York who said he was going to do something and did it. He is the one for me. And that was it. I never looked at another guy. I had a date that weekend. Somebody was coming up from Connecticut. I called him. I says, listen, you can come, and I'll show you New York, but you're not getting anything. I met the guy I'm going to marry. I said, I met the man I'm going to marry. Took him a little while to disentangle himself from all the girlfriends he had, but I made sure I stuck around so that he would know I was the one for him. And that was it. And then we have Piper here. So Karen was responsible. I just consider her responsible for the whole way my life laid out.
Wow.
Was because of this girl here that my teacher said, don't show her your good moves.
Imagine. And that probably filtered into the way you were, because you just, later on as a teacher, as I can speak as one of your students, you just wanted to share everything. You didn't withhold, you didn't make it difficult to understand. You just gave. Appreciate that so much. Okay. Ozell.
So Ozell, that's why I asked if it was Ozell from Turkey. Ozell is a Turkish dancer. And you see that bauble in the middle of her bra there? And you can almost see she's choking herself like this. She could make that thing pop out. Do you remember her? You remember her dancing? And she would just dance, and you talk about flutters, but she was like, and that thing would pop in this way and this way and this way. And I remember she had platform heels. She must have worn shoes that brought her this high off the ground. She was a little thing. And she wore heels like this, and I just get to get up and demonstrate this, if you don't mind. I'll try to stay within view. And Ozell, and this is probably where I learned the walk, okay? And Ozell would just come out, and this is all she did. Pop, pop. Pop, pop. And that was Ozell Turkba.
Did you take anything from seeing her? You mentioned maybe she had an attitude that you...
She had an attitude. I don't think I ever spoke a word to her. So it's not like we were friends. But she was a big influence because she had that attitude.
Like you're going to love me kind of thing.
You're going to love me, yeah.
And maybe that was a little bit of what we felt in your finale energy.
Yeah, and it's just that if she got to the end and she couldn't move, she would just sit there and, and that was enough. She would do that for the 3 minutes and the show was over. Sorry.
Another influence, Nadia Jamal.
Right, Nadia, yep.
Oh,
So this is one of the workshops. You can see how many people were in that workshop. She's a very famous dancer. She has since passed recently, I think.
And not too long.
Recently, within the past couple of years. And Nadia Jamal just one. And she's Lebanese, and the reason why I consider her part of an influence is that the Lebanese belly dancing is more lyrical than, let's say, the Egyptian or the Turkish. And I'm looking for confirmation because I'm just speaking from what I think I know, okay? But it's more lyrical. And it's just smooth and it flows and you feel like a dancer. Not just somebody on a stage performing. You feel like a dancer. So she was very influential at all, also.
And Morocco.
Okay, Morocco, Auntie Rocky. She was a very good friend of ours. Also, I don't know if I took any lessons with her, but we were very good friends there. And she would come to the restaurant a lot. Do you have, I don't know. If
yeah, I'm heading right there. You want to go?
If you want to.
Yeah.
So that was this was at our wedding. We had a traditional wedding in Boston. Nice Jewish wedding, the chicken cutlets and the, whatever. And then after our honeymoon, we owned a restaurant. So we went back to the restaurant. We'll talk a little bit about the restaurant. But we went to the restaurants and had a full reception at the restaurant. And all of the dancers that were friends of ours in New York, she didn't put on, she just got up and danced. We had dancers that were in costumes. But all the dancers came to the wedding and all the musicians, I don't know if I gave you a shot with the musicians, all the musicians, they all came as gifts to us. So we didn't pay any of the dancers, we didn't pay any of the musicians, we didn't pay for anything. And then, there she is talking to the bridegroom.
I was looking for the musicians.
There's just somebody playing the tambourine, which, by the way, my granddaughter says I'm just like a big giant tambourine today. Okay, so And there she is, just talking. That's the bridegroom. You see how handsome he is? He really is.
Ah.
You see? You see why all that tea went into the plant? And that's Zarifa with my mother. Zarifa was a big dancer. She's since moved to Germany, but she was a big dancer in New York. And that's my mother. And she was dancing with my mother. And so, just old pictures. Zarifa and Mom at the wedding. Now, and there she is. My father, by the way, did not come to that because he wanted no part of it. But my mother was a good sport. My mother came. And there's Zarifa dancing. Mary Lou Ganem, I don't know if anybody knows her, Mary Lou, but that was the restaurant.
She danced with Eddie, or was that
Oh yeah, we all did.
Eddie the chic coat check?
Yeah. Oh, that's saying goodbye on the way to the honeymoon.
Aww.
I have that caftan, 30 pounds ago. Yeah, okay. That's one of the things I'm not putting on the table. I'll keep that one. Oh, dancing.
Beautiful. That's you.
Yep.
Beautiful.
So that was, so
Okay,
that's the
now,
restaurant.
Tell us about the restaurant.
So the restaurant, Joe came home one day. He was working at Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn, and I was still typing. All right, and he came home one day and he says, "Guess what I bought?" And I figured, who knows? He said, "I bought a restaurant." What? What? And he bought it on notes. Some other waiter at the Sheepshead Bay couldn't handle it, and he bought it on notes that we just it's a mortgage, like you just pay it, and we paid rent. And he didn't know how to cook. He is now one of the best chefs. He didn't know how to cook.
Oh my
And and anyone who's ever eaten, oh, she's got her thumbs up. Anybody who's eaten Joe's food knows it's probably the best Arabic food you'd ever want to have. What it was, he had a friend, the guy that was in the picture that I said playing the tambourine, he was a very good friend of ours. Joe helped his family with green cards. That was the lineage there. His friend worked up in Manhattan at a place, oh God, I can't remember, not Egyptian Gardens, but something with Egyptian in it. And he was the chef for that restaurant. And every night when the restaurant closed, he would get on the subway and come from upper Manhattan all the way down to Brooklyn and make all our food for the next day.
Wow. Gee whiz.
Okay? And that's how we had food for the restaurant. Otherwise, I don't know what we would have put on the table. And so Nasser, his name was Nasser, and he made all of the food. And then eventually, Joe, little by little, would learn how to cook. Like he'd make a big bowl of hummus, what he thought was hummus, and he would take it, and he would say, "Oh, this is awful," and he'd throw it out. And he would watch Nasser cook. I mean, there was no cookbook, there was no recipes. He would just watch Nasser cook. He said, "Well, I think when he put in a can of this, he put in a can of this, and maybe he put some garlic." I mean, he didn't know what he was doing. But eventually, Joe learned how to cook. We had review in Gourmet magazine. I remember, I didn't know about, I knew about Gourmet magazine, but I didn't know we were in it. And I remember one Saturday night, the restaurant was packed, and there was a line around the corner waiting to come into the restaurant. They were just waiting for tables to clear. And I go, "What's going on?" And one of the customers said, "Well, didn't you know you were in Gourmet magazine this weekend?" And the New York Daily News, which I think is now defunct, but they had the 10 best restaurants in New York, and we made that list almost every week. Wow. There was a guy named Stendhal who had 100 best restaurants in New York, and he put us in his book.
Wow.
And this was all, and the reason we don't have the restaurant is that it was we were renting it. We had to pay notes to own the restaurant, but then we had to rent where the restaurant was. And we were such a success that there was a store above the restaurant, and that was the guy who owned it. And he said, "Well, I want my son to have this. You're such a success. We're not going to renew your lease." So without a lease, we weren't able to sell the restaurant. I mean, the restaurant was worthless to us once we didn't have a lease. And we said, all right, what are we going to do? And Joe started working somewhere else. The lease was up. We lost the restaurant. And just to know, just rewards, that guy, the restaurant must have closed in 3 months. Because the guy thought it was the location. We were in a cellar. It's a cellar. And the guy who owned the property thought it was hot property. It was hot because we owned it. You know, so that restaurant no longer exists. But that's the story of the restaurant. So this, yeah.
And the restaurant was called
Sinbad.
Sinbad.
Right.
And you danced there.
I did dance there, and that's sort of when I left the clubs in New York, because now I was dancing at the restaurant. Okay, so on weekends we had live music. During the week we didn't do dancing every night, but maybe Thursday night is usually a busy night for restaurants, so maybe Thursday. And we put the record, we had a record player. No such thing as a boombox or a CD player or whatever the heck you're going to use to produce music. You used record players. And I remember we had a little cubby in the restaurant there was a little cubby we had a record player. And I think the record player must have had speakers, because you wouldn't have heard it just with a record player. And I would put on my Eddie Kochek records and my George Abdu records. And that was it, and I would dance to records. Wow. And speaking about Eddie Kochek, do you all know Strictly Dancing and Eddie Kochek? So Eddie, we were on Atlantic Avenue, which was a big Arab place. And Eddie was on Atlantic Avenue. And Eddie came into the restaurant all the time. And I remember one time he came in, he says, Miriam, I got to show you something. And he unwrapped, it was a gun. I had never seen a real live gun in my life. I said, why are you bringing this into my restaurant? He says, I had to show it to you. So that's Eddie Kochek showing me his guns. And that's,
I thought we were going to hear a new piece of music or something.
No.
So we have this whole other chapter, things that happened after New York, which I really want to hear about, because that's when we intersected, and so many of us here today. But I want to just kind of recap some things that I think are important for us to take away, things that you overcame before we move on. So you had benign vertigo. You're dancing with vertigo.
Right. It's called benign paroxysmal vertigo. And I would notice it because when I was doing the veils, I would get, like a little dizzy like this. And I went to the doctor. And I said, must be an inner ear infection or something. And he did it, and he did a whole exam. And he said, I don't understand why you're not in a wheelchair. He said, this is really bad. I says, well, what are you talking about? I'm a belly dancer. He says, well, what do you do? And I showed him, and we've done this in class, where I would stand on one leg and lift a hip and just work with the one hip and balance on the one leg. They're shaking their heads. They remember this. And I would show him some of the stuff that we do. And he says, well, that's why you're not in a wheelchair.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had written an article on that I don't know where the article appeared. I don't remember. But I had a lot of people respond to it. And say,
I looked for that article. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I don't know. If I ever come across it, I'll let you know. But
great endorsement for belly dancing.
Yeah, and it was all because of the dancing. So the dancing has really played a part in my life more than giving me a granddaughter.
Wonderful. How about the fact that you moved to New York to study with Bobby, and it didn't work out? Was that a hard thing for you to move on through? Or was it just a small bump in the road?
It was a bump in the road.
Okay, you just went right on.
There were so many. I mean, look, I had Anahid, I had Serena if I wanted to take from Serena. It's like, okay, next.
Next teacher.
Next teacher.
Beautiful. Studying in Westchester, driving an hour and a half. That's...
Train an hour and a half.
Training, yeah. That's worth us in today's day and age taking a look at, because we're Very convenience oriented, and
Yeah.
that's just really remarkable.
Yeah, you
Was that
just-
hard at the time, or was that just people just
No,
did that?
It was just, you just did it.
You went for what you loved, and that's what you had to do.
Exactly.
Okay, it's beautiful.
Exactly.
And you've mentioned to me another sort of obstacle that you had at times. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about the body image topic and how you overcame that.
Can you imagine coming to New York with that body and thinking I was the fattest dancer there, and that's why I couldn't get my foot in the door? Okay? And it's never left me. Isn't it? And my girls can tell me. It's always like whenever I was really upset about something, like maybe Michelle would say, "Have you lost a few pounds?" Like they knew that would make me, you knew that would make me happy, right? It's just always been, and I always felt that I could go much, much, much further than I ever did if I didn't have that feeling about myself. The other side of the coin is I never would have become a teacher.
Okay.
So, but it was a really big body image thing that I'm still battling. Have you, I ever not on a diet? I mean, let's look at that. So it was really a big part of, and the thing is, when Orel asked me to pull out old pictures, I hadn't looked at that in years, and I looked and I went, what was my problem? What was my problem? But that was the whole body image thing. It really played a big part in everything I've done since that picture.
Well, I'd like to ask you, as a contrasting moment, moving away from obstacles to your proudest moments, you've talked about times when you were performing that you were completely in the music. And that triumphs any of these issues and mind chatter. And the music was rattling your bones, you said. What were those moments that were just, didn't matter what body you had or what was going on?
Well, a couple stick in my mind. One was, I told you, the melody that I had done. I had a big, do you have the picture for my big drum? I call it my big drum. Shadia knows
There's
the right
big
word
drum,
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shadia knows what's the correct word for that kind of a drum?
Double melody.
I call it my big drum, all right? I carried that with me you could see I got my glasses. I mean, I carried that with me everywhere. So I had done a big show, and Mitchell Kalsunas was the band, and I don't remember, I think it was a benefit for Rose.
Oh, Rose Champagne.
And I remember I did that. So I didn't have I must have brought my big drum with me and gave it to Mitchell. I don't remember. But I remember it was my red gown, and I had my cane, and I was just, I don't know if I did a whole routine and landed up with the melody or just whatever it was. I don't remember it exactly. But I remember that was one of the most stunning performances I had ever done. And Mitchell came up to me afterwards and said something, and he emailed me, and Phaedra emailed me, and other dancers emailed me or came up to me, and it was just, and that was, I would have to say that was probably out of body.
Out of body.
It really was. It really was. And then I had another performance that I always remember. This is what I was wearing, so nothing fancy, mind you. And it was at the Middle East. It was one of Zabeth's things. And I remember when I danced, and it was another out-of-body thing. And I would have fun with the musicians. Like Joey Kamunjum was bald, and I would always have a thing, and I'd go wipe off his bald head. And I was always playing with the musicians, and I would do, and I was like crazy, like out-of-body crazy. And two husbands, not mine, came up to me afterwards and really had quite a conversation. Oh. I never told their wives. This is the first time I'm telling the story. But it was just, and it goes to show you that body image has nothing to do with it. Costumes has nothing to do with it. I'm not wearing makeup, has not. And you think that that's all so important. And it really, really isn't. It really isn't. And I remember one time dancing, oh God, what's her name? Begins with an S. I don't remember. but she's a dancer in Boston, and we were dancing together somewhere, and I have these,
Sabrina.
Sabrina, yes, and I had these gorgeous earrings, another thing I won't be getting rid of, just beautiful white with this and that. And I remember I was in the dressing room, and it's like, oh my God, I forgot my earrings, and I was like beside myself. And she said to me, she said, you know, if all you have to worry about is you think people are looking at what earrings you're wearing, this is not something to be concerned about. I mean, I paraphrase, but she sort of put it in her place, in its place, which sort of is what I'm saying now. All that doesn't matter. The earrings don't matter. The makeup doesn't matter. The costumes don't matter. The marriages don't matter. Nothing, you know, if you're going to have an experience like this is the experience. But those 2 times is what really, really sticks out to me.
Thank you for sharing those. It's just a wonderful, rich conversation right there that we all need to hear. And I wanted to ask you, you'd mentioned clubs, stages versus clubs. One venue you found you really thrived in over the other in terms of that, getting to that out-of-body experience.
Anything as long as it was live music. Didn't matter where it was. It didn't matter whether it was in this kind of room like I'm describing that was Rose's Benefit, that there was, maybe they sold 200 tickets. I mean, it was a huge venue. Doesn't matter if that, or if it doesn't matter if it's a small place, or as long as it's live music, because you feed off that energy. And hopefully the music today will be so loud
That it'll feel like
that it'll be shaking my bones. And that's sort of what I need.
okay. Other proudest moments involve your teaching. You started out with a baby on your back in an apartment in New York teaching?
I did in Brooklyn. I had Ida, her mom, was in a baby carrier, and that's when I started to teach dancing.
Now, you had your master's.
I did. Oh,
And
no, I'm going to tell you about the master's.
Okay.
Okay, so at some point, it was either before or after we owned the restaurant, whatever it was, I said, you know, I have that master's degree hanging over my head. I'll never be able to move on unless I finish that master's degree. So I think I had 5 or 6 incompletes. And what I had to do, I think the time was running out. I must have gotten a notice. If you're not finished at June, we're throwing you out of the program. So it had to be 5 years. They probably give you 5 years to do a program like that. And I wrote the term papers for all of the 5 courses. And then this master's was like a doctorate degree where you had to do a thesis and you had to take oral exams. So the thesis, I had just written 5 term papers. It's all in my mind. Freshly in my mind. So I was able to write a thesis that got approved. And for the written exams, for the oral exams, also everything was fresh in my mind. If I had finished the class if I had finished the classes but never took the exams, I never would have been able to get that degree. But because I had just written everything, you know, and we're not talking opening up Google and looking up stuff, okay? We're talking about going to the library and handwriting the notes and handwriting the thesis and typing it if you made a mistake. I don't think there was whiteout. They had like a white tape or something, and you put the white tape and you type again, and it would cover the paper with white, and you'd be able to do another letter. So, I mean, we're not talking about even being easy. It was that old-fashioned kind of stuff, and you'd have to go to the library, and the thesis must have had 100, 150 references. I read all of them. Whatever I had to do. So that was it. So I had my degree at that time, I still got a teaching degree later, but that particular degree that I had left Connecticut for, that left for belly dancing, that I finished that.
Well, I guess I was asking because by the time you were teaching in Boston, you knew how to apply all the learning styles into your belly dance classes, and I'm wondering, did you start right out like that?
No. So in that time, by then we lived in Newton. I remember that. We lived in Newton.
Why did you come back?
Why did it come back?
Back to Boston.
Oh, because we didn't have the restaurant anymore.
Okay.
And my whole family is in Boston, and Joe's whole family is in Lebanon. What the hell are we doing in New York? So once we didn't have the restaurant, I remember he would come. And I remember every holiday, every 3-day weekend, every whatever, I would pack. We had an old station wagon with the wood on the sides. It wasn't even wood, it was contact paper. They made it look like wood. And I packed the high chair and the playpen and this, you couldn't, it was my parents. They couldn't just go borrow a high chair from someone. So I came with everything and the 2 kids, and I don't know how many times I did that. And finally, at some point, I said, listen, the next time better be with a moving van. I can't do this anymore. And we had been saving and saving and saving in hopes of buying a new restaurant. But by then it was the early 80s, and anybody here who remembers the way it was, $100 was worth $3. There was a huge crash. And so we could never afford another, whatever we had saved, we could never afford a restaurant. And not only that, but in this restaurant we had, my husband was in the back of the house, meaning the cooking and the chefs and everything, and I was in the front of the house, meaning the waitresses and the customers and everything. And I said to him, I'm never doing that again. I said, if you're going to buy a restaurant, it has to be where you hire help. More than once on a Saturday night when we were busy, I would just say, you would treat hired help better than you're treating me, and I'd walk out. And he was left with the front and the back of the house.
Okay.
And I just said, I'm not going to do that. How our marriage survived, I have no idea. And I said, but we would be in the middle of a fight, and we'd go home, we'd leave the restaurant, and the fight would be over. And we'd go out to eat at 2 in the morning, whatever it was. And we did what we had to do, and the next morning the key went in the door, and by the way, and we were just... So we worked very hard to separate that, but I knew that I never wanted to be in a small restaurant again where I had to be part of it. So we had saved money. So at some point when we were here, we had made the move and we were renting, and I said, we have this, I said, either get a restaurant or get a house. I said, there's money sitting in the bank. And so we bought a house. That's when we moved, to Framingham and all of that. But so that's how I landed back here, because there was no reason to be in New York anymore.
And you start teaching.
And I started teaching.
You end up at Arthur Murray in South
Oh, yeah,
Station,
exactly,
Boston University.
Exactly. But while I was in Newton, I went to Worcester State, I think it's called Worcester State University. It was still college. And I got a teaching degree from there. So when you say, how did I know about teaching styles and learning styles and all of that, I actually did have a degree in teaching, as well as the other degrees that I had.
Because your classes were different in that way. You knew, this person needs hands-on, this person needs sounds,
Right.
It was a different experience because a lot of us were taking from some lady in the basement, and it was called Follow the Bouncing Butt. And and it was a privilege to be in the ladies' basement following the bouncing butt, and I don't want to disparage it, but your teaching was very, very different. You would use a whiteboard for the people that wanted to read the words. You would write.
I'd put your hands right on the hips and move your hips for you, if you could, till you could feel it.
And of course, the drilling and the drilling and the drilling. Can I read a little thing just to give people a tiny bit of insight? So this is an email that you sent us, I think. It says, you cannot have the joy and pleasure of playing a symphony if you do not spend hours with the drudgery of practicing the scales. Learning those steps to perfection opened the way to the joy of dancing with seeming abandon. All this was not diametrically opposed to learning the spirit and joy of the dance. Middle Eastern music, Egyptian, Turkish, Greek, Persian, etc., was used for all of the dance moves, and if you were lucky enough, as I was, a great deal of knowledge about Middle Eastern culture, cuisine, and traditions were learned along the way. In my case, I was also welcomed into the families of both my early teachers, one Egyptian, one Armenian. And when a teacher, even if he or she has no firsthand connection to the Middle East, can flavor the lessons with cultural tidbits, it dearly enhances the entire dancing experience. You were giving, all kinds of levels of advice and lessons to us, and it was just so thorough and engaging.
And I remember even telling students, like, I'd say, take ice skating lessons. Learn how to move on the ice. Learn how to balance yourself. Do the ice skating lessons. Do karate. Doesn't matter. You just got to get in touch with your body like that. I said, you don't have to take lessons from me, but if you want to continue this, for now, don't necessarily go to another teacher. Take, like I said, take ice skating lessons. Take whatever. Then go back to it. But you have to, like when I said, the music has to run through you. Part of that is being comfortable with how your body moves.
You also helped people learn to be professional dancers through workshops with live music.
Right.
You had a host of dancers that became professionals.
Oh, yeah.
Here's a little quote that Saroya Jamal sent because she couldn't come today. She said, "Please tell her thank you so much for introducing me to the magical world of AMCAB and the 5-part routine. She was the one who introduced me to Eddie the Chic Kochek, Strictly Belly Dancing Volume 2. I remember Amira style for one of my recital pieces. She told us a host of interesting stories about what it was like coming into her own as a dancer in New York. It all sounded so exciting. I still have her book, The Language of the Dance. Amira Jamal inspired me to dive deeper into this, and I did as I went on to study with Melina and Nadira for many years. And then she says, thank you from the bottom of my heart for making this world come to life for me." She says that, sends
sweet.
that to you. And I'm sure so many that I mentioned at the beginning would echo the same thing. I did not have the courage or the confidence to try to share what I loved, and you refused to listen to my insecurity. You just smiled and shoved me out there. So can you tell us about how Sammy helped you with your teaching?
Okay. All right. Sammy is my son, the football player. And so my very first thanks go to him over the viewpoint about the drills. Just practice, practice, practice. You're a quarterback, don't worry what the linebacker does. You just practice. So that was the first. So he always gave me that encouragement every August when I sat there and said, are they going to want to come another September? And, and how many years? I don't know. But the other thing was also one of the moves I'm going to do for you today, the Sammy spin, the veil. And Norvell said, I didn't remember why it's called the Sammy spin, but let me tell you, there's a veil move that's quite lovely. And I saw it on video, and I watched it, and I watched it, and I did it in slow, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to do this move. I says, but my Sammy sits and watches football tapes of the other teams before he goes to play them, and he watches, and he knows how to interpret what he sees. So I called Sammy downstairs, and I said, Sammy, and this is a big guy, football player. And I said, Sammy, you got to show me. I got to show you this video. Please tell me what she's doing. I can't figure it out. He watched the video once. He did it once. He dropped the veil. He said, there. I said, no, this is not what's going to work for me. And he stayed down in that basement and taught me that veil move until I could figure out what it was, and then teach you what it was.
I want him to know I teach the Sammy spin.
And we call it the Sammy spin.
And I didn't know why it was. I thought it does it have anything to do with Samia Gamal? Why did she call it that? So I'm so glad we had this chat.
Yes.
Thank you, Sammy. Now, was it also Sammy? He saw your recital students?
Okay, so this was, you were going to ask me what I'm most proud of with my teaching. And I don't know, maybe that was going to be the wrap up, maybe this, but let me talk about it now. So we had a recital at BU, and all you girls were performing, okay? And if you've ever heard this saying that says, a mother's job is not to have her children lean on her. It's to teach them that they do not need leaning. Okay? I'm going to cry. So at this recital, Sammy came, because Sammy went to BU, and he would come to my recitals. And he came up after, he says, Mom, some of those dancers, are they better than you? I says, you know what, Sammy, they're supposed to be. And that's the way I felt about teaching.
Thank you.
I'm only the vessel for it. I never did recitals with my students. Partly was the body image, partly is I can't remember choreography for the life of me. I had my jewels of Jamal, these gals who were sitting here. They did all the choreography. I never choreographed a thing because I couldn't. I could go to the right 8 times, and I could go to the left 8 times, and I could turn. I could do linear dancing, but I couldn't do it, and I had terrible throughout of all of this, I had terrible stage fright, believe it or not. Not once the music started. Once the music started, bam, I was out there. But the anticipation of it. And so I never did. So my recitals really were only for my students. And I never took anything from them. But that's when Sammy said that to me. I said, they're supposed to be better.
You wanted to share everything.
Yeah, and here's my jewels.
There we are. And some of them are here today.
Yep, there's Heather in the front.
Yep. And Jamila, a lot of folks know, is a fine
Right,
dancer.
and you want to tell who they are?
Alikia over here in the corner with the big
With the pink down here.
pink outfit. She's just a stunning dancer who's stepped back a little now. This is me in my sort of
The front, and Whippy.
primary color, garish. I could have played, it was like the Wonder Woman costume.
Yeah. And
I only bought it because no one else wanted it, and it was cheap, and it was my first costume.
Why
I'm like,
not?
well, I'll
Yes.
take the poor thing home. I can help it. But I never had the courage until you forced me out into it. Sharonda's here in the
Sharonda's here.
bronze.
Michelle.
Michelle is here up in the top.
Sarah, why are you not in
Sarah's
this picture?
not, but she was taking from you at the time.
Were you taking lessons at the time? You were.
I moved up the next year.
There we go.
Oh,
Sarah joined.
because I know you were in the jewels.
Yeah.
Okay,
Chantal
right.
is dancing again so wonderfully in Shadia's projects, as far as I know. So happy to see Amy Smith is next to Chantal.
In the back of Amy Smith is Jackie's sister.
Christine.
Right.
So this Jamila down at the bottom, her sister's up at the top.
Right.
Everyone kept dancing. I don't recall. Nancy wrote a book about Egypt on the far left.
Oh, okay.
Andy.
And this is Webke down here.
Webke? Webke?
Yeah. She's back in Germany.
She's in Germany. So anyway, this was just one class.
Right.
I hid in the back row because they were all exponentially better than me, and I was embarrassed. So I learned from your students, and I learned from you.
And the other thing that I did that was not available in Boston at the time is I gave lessons for dancers to become professional dancers.
Yes.
So we had all of the music and all the rhythms and the costumes. And I remember, and we did this in Framingham even, I remember taking chairs like this, and we'd have a big studio like this, and I'd put a chair and a table and a pocketbook and this. I said, if you're going to dance in the clubs, you have to have peripheral vision. And I would make them dance around an obstacle course to be able to do that, so that they could tell from here that there was a table here and they wouldn't fall over it. So I did a lot of professional training.
I remember you had us do a tag team 5-part. Remember? We never knew what part we were going to get. We'd pull, and it's like, you're doing Vale. And at that time, I didn't feel I could do any of the parts. but there's a leak, you're doing it, oh boy, I'm next, oh, up you
Yeah.
would go. So you had all different kinds of techniques,
So
and
we had that, and I also taught lyrics to all of the Arabic songs. I says, you know, you don't want to be dancing this beautiful thing, and he's talking about cooking string beans. I mean, it might be a beautiful song, but it's not maybe something you want to dance to. So I had a whole notebook with I had it in Arabic and I had it translated, so I had the lyrics of, you know, not hundreds, but dozens of dance songs that you hear. And then you could decide if you wanted to dance to them or not.
beautiful. Teaching, you made a huge impact in Boston, but then there was things aside from that that you were proud of, like Nebda. I think you can find a little Nebda. Oh, that's a nice maker of jewels.
Maker of jewels. Oh, that's so sweet.
I put that on there. Give me the jewels of Jamal. There we go.
So next to that.
Next to that is the Nebda icon. Yeah.
Okay, so Northeast Belly Dancing Association. So I was a judge at a belly dancing contest in Missouri. And who came with me was Amy Smith came with me, Aziza, who was one of the gals there, Shalimar, who's a dancer in Connecticut, my friend Karen, me, and there was the sixth one, I don't remember. Did I say Amy Smith?
Yes.
Okay. Well, whoever it was.
Is this the
oh,
one? Is this-
Kelly Hanberger.
Oh, Kelly. She
Okay,
was wonderful.
so they came with me. I was judging this contest. I mean, there was no reason, but they wanted to come with me, so we came. And they had an association out there that had put together this event. And we said, wouldn't it be great if we had something like that in New England? And so we came back and we started the Northeast Belly Dance Association. And we kept it Northeast because we didn't want just people in Massachusetts. So if you were in Pennsylvania or you were, I think Delaware and Maryland already consider themselves Southerners. But anything that was considered Northerners with the Northeast Belly Dance Association. And we set up venues because I had hundreds of students. I mean, sometimes in Boston, I would have to put on 2 recitals back to back. I'd have 30 in one recital and 30 in another. I mean, that's how many students I had. But there were people who only had 3 or 4 students, like Jackie. I let her use my recital for her students, because otherwise she had no way to do. I mean, she could do a recital, would just be the families of the 4 students. So if somebody had only a small amount of students, I would let them piggyback on my recital. So this Northeast Belly Dance Association was supposed to take care of that. So we would have teachers, we say, you know, if you have 10 or less students and you want to do a recital, sign up and we'll do an event. So that's what we did, and we had a lot of fun with it. It didn't take off forever and ever, but at the very beginning, it was very, very popular.
I started with you, moved here, and ended up on the Cape with Kasim and Khadijah in the Cape Cod chapter.
Right, we had chapters. That was the other thing. So that, let's say somebody from Philadelphia would say, I'm not coming to Boston to do a recital, but they could have a Philadelphia chapter. So we try to do that. And I
we
think
put on shows so that because the venues were dwindling, and this was a way to give us. There's another
slide right after that I just want to. So this was it. The 5 basic rules. Have fun. It's not complicated. Support our community. Promote the dance. Say it with us. It's not complicated. Right. And this was just starting out. How many events did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 events. Oh, the hot flashes. We did a show. You had to be, I think, over 45 or something. And we had a group, and it was called the Hot Flashes. And we had a venue in Brookline. Oh yeah, it was only live music. Anytime we did any of this was one of the other requirements. Had to be live music. And a lot of musicians were part of this organization also because they wanted to support the dancers. So we had live music for Hot Flashes, and you had a show, Proof of Age. And we had to look at your license, and you couldn't be in Hot Flashes unless you were 45 or older. And we did that event in Brookline.
Spread all the way. It was down here. We did several shows down here You gave us a way to gather around something, and studio to studio we gathered too. So it was a really great networking.
Yeah, and I don't know how it fell apart. At some point, I was not that, I was a founder, but I wasn't that involved after X amount of years.
Well, I want to thank you, because what went longer than the chapters was the website, where we could see every teacher's events that were going on, and we used that very successfully to make sure that we weren't stepping on each other. All of the teachers that were involved, which was everybody, was listing their events there. So that was really useful for a long time. We need another one of those. So NEBDA, New England
Right.
Belly Dance Association, was another proud moment. And then Silver Zills, little group
Oh,
coming up
Silver
here.
Zills, Andrea, put your hand up. She's one of the Silver Zills. Yep, Andrea is in the green, and there I am in the orange, and we had a third dancer in the blue. This is on a cruise ship. And Barbara was there. We danced on this cruise ship, and I gave a lesson, and the cruise director, they knew we were going to dance, and then she said, "Oh, can I just put this in the brochure so everybody can come?" And it was like this big room, and it was announced on the loudspeaker, and people would just come for belly dancing. So we did this, and this was in 2011.
New chapters, new
chapters,
new
and
things
there's
you're
just-
proud of. It didn't stop in New York, and
Yeah.
you're sitting here right now. And it's just very exciting to see you willing to step out and dance for us in a few minutes. But let's wrap it up, if you wouldn't mind,
Sure.
with what you told me was the thing you were most proud of. And it doesn't have to do with dancing in New York as a professional, which is a huge accolade, and knowing all of these incredible people. And it isn't even that you are an exceptional teacher. You said it was friendships.
I have friends sitting right here that met in my dance class. And they're all here friends 15, 20 years later. Still friends. Andrea, my friend that I met at the double veil class. This friendship. I mean, we have so many friendships. And when I say I was teaching with Ida on my back, and she's, how old is your mother? 45? 46? I think she's 46. My first student that came to Brooklyn to take that lesson with Ida on my back, we're still friends to this day.
Wow.
So it's not just my friendships. I'm looking here and I'm looking at these friendships. You know, I just remember you two, Sarah and Michelle, and you were peas in a pod, and you did everything together, and it was just, I felt so, what? And I just felt so lucky that I was a part. So when I was long gone, and I don't mean like long gone here, but just long gone dancing, that obviously still friends. And Heather and Sharonda, I mean, it's just, when they walked through the door, it was like my mouth dropped. I mean, not just that they were here to honor me, but like they came in together. It's like, oh my God. So that's really, I think, I would have to say, really proud.
Can we go to that picture there?
So this is Karen. This is my friend Karina, who passed away. And this is Karen and look, I'm wearing that bracelet. And that was, Karen and I were friends. And Amy Smith had brought in a photographer called Michael Baxter. And he came, for those of you who remember, and he had taken photos. And he just remembered that, and Amy told me this last night. She said these were like his favorite photos because it just showed the kind of friendship that we had.
Beautiful.
And this,
There's another one.
I think there's a
There's
couple
more.
there's two more. Yeah. And that's Karen, and this is who would have been here today. I still feel she is.
She is.
She is. And that's my
beautiful.
friendships, and that's
Beautiful.
what dance brought me. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are something. Thank you, Amira Jamal. Your dedication to your passion and to the advancement of our art has inspired countless dancers and generations of teachers even. You showed us how to wish others grow to be better than ourselves. You've modeled celebrating others. And I know I'm not alone. Our art, our region, our relationships with others, and our lives are deeply blessed by you. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.